This wasn't gossip whispered behind palace curtains. This was a calculated detonation aimed straight at the spine of the British crown, and when Princess Anne finally spoke, the monarchy stopped playing defense and went to war. The morning of February 4th, 2026 did not begin with ceremony. It began with alarm. Inside Gatcombe Park, the Princess Royal made a decision that senior aides later described as unavoidable. By dawn, an emergency statement was drafted, phones were ringing across London, and the royal family's long silence shattered with surgical precision. This was no denial. This was no vague reassurance. This was an accusation and a warning. Princess Anne's words landed like steel, an attack on the dignity of the crown, a reckless manipulation designed to corrode public trust. She did not dramatize. She did not flinch. And she did not name names, which made the message even more lethal. At the center of the storm stood a 23-year-old woman calling herself Lindsay, who had surfaced in central London claiming to be the biological daughter of Prince Andrew and Meghan Markle. According to her story, she was conceived during a secret yacht encounter off the coast of Nice in 2002, nearly 2 decades before Meghan ever entered royal life. The claim was obscene in its scale and devastating in its implication. The rumor first crept online on January 31, dismissed by many as internet rot. But on February 2, everything changed. Leaked documents, including a birth certificate conspicuously missing a father's name, flooded social media. That was the moment the story crossed from fringe fantasy into national crisis. By 9:00 a.m. on February 4, Princess Anne summoned select correspondents and senior advisors for an extraordinary briefing. Cameras rolled, faces tightened. Calm but visibly severe, Anne addressed the country and made something else quietly explosive clear. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex had already decided to end their marriage weeks earlier. The separation, she said, was underway, though contractual obligations would require limited joint appearances through 2026 for pre-signed commercial commitments. That revelation detonated its own shockwave, but it was only the beginning. 2 days earlier, another voice had entered the narrative, one the palace could not ignore. Sophie Rees-Jones, Prince Andrew's former wife, issued a statement through lawyers acknowledging she had heard whispers as far back as 2004 about Andrew's presence with an American woman in elite Mediterranean yacht circles. She stressed there was no confirmation of a relationship and that any connection could have been one-sided. Still, the timing of her disclosure mattered. It gave historical gravity to a story the palace now had to treat as strategically dangerous, even if unproven. Princess Anne addressed that too, warning that resurrecting fragments of the past could be weaponized to contaminate the present. False linkages, she cautioned, were being used to inflame suspicion around already vulnerable figures, including both Prince Andrew and Prince Harry. And then came the turn no one saw coming. Princess Anne confirmed that a critical lead had come not from intelligence services, but from Prince Harry himself. In a confidential memo dated February 1st, Harry raised concerns about unexplained financial transfers tied to a Delaware-registered entity named Archie Type Consulting LLC. The money trail, stretching from early 2023 through January 2026, showed funds siphoned from Sussex linked charitable reserves, large cash withdrawals, wire transfers, anonymous legal retainers in London. Some of those payments, Anne revealed, were now linked directly to Lindsay's legal representation. That was the moment the scandal stopped being about identity and became about money. Anne's concern was blunt. Philanthropic structures appeared to have been used for non-charitable purposes. No invoices, no public disclosures, no transparent justification. When trust collapses at that level, she said, it threatens institutional credibility itself. What made matters worse was Meghan Markle's silence. No denial, no cooperation, no explanation, public or private. Palace sources described her behavior over the previous week as evasive and calculatedly quiet. Staff reported that personal items had been destroyed, including notebooks, digital drives, and communication devices. One detail sent shivers through royal corridors: a late-night bonfire of personal journals at the Montecito estate on February 1. Silence, Anne made clear, was no longer neutral. By February 4, the palace activated internal investigation teams under the joint oversight of Princess Anne and Prince William, forensic accountants, former intelligence analysts, legal historians. 2 decades of records were pulled apart piece by piece. The public response oscillated between disbelief and fury, and the palace did not attempt to soothe it, because the real danger lay beneath the headlines. At the heart of the financial web was Archie Type Consulting LLC, incorporated in Delaware in November 2022. Its structure was opaque by design. No client lists, no service contracts, no tax transparency. Its only consistent activity, transferring large sums to a London law firm now confirmed to represent Lindsay. The timing was damning. Payments began in March 2023, surged mid-year, and spiked again in January 2026, just days before Lindsay went public. The breakthrough, investigators say, came when Prince Harry accessed an old burner phone hidden inside Meghan's private yoga studio. Inside a concealed compartment were Western Union receipts, the device itself, and a printed bank routing slip labeled with Archie Type identifiers. Harry cross-checked the data with U.S. tax filings and found a match to Meghan's digital signature on the LLC registration. He did not confront her. Instead, he sent the evidence to Princess Anne with a single line: he didn't understand what was happening, but he needed to stop it. Auditors then traced over $150,000 withdrawn in cash across Montecito, Toronto, and Paris, all aligned with Meghan's travel records. No charitable outputs matched the withdrawals. None appeared in public transparency reports. One investigator described it as a laundering corridor disguised as humanitarian work. Meanwhile, Lindsay was living at Claridge's hotel. Her legal fees, stylists, and transport paid through offshore channels tied back to Archie Type accounts. A $50,000 transfer dated January 15 marked Project L Phase 2 landed 2 days before her arrival in London. Investigators saw premeditation, not confusion. As Princess Anne made clear, the palace was not interested in spectacle. It was interested in exposure, slow, controlled, and devastating. And that was only the first phase. What happened next, according to the explosive narrative racing through media circles, was not chaos, it was choreography. The palace did not explode publicly. It tightened, quietly, like a fist closing around a secret it had decided was finally ready to be crushed. Behind closed doors, pressure shifted toward Prince Andrew, not as the villain of the moment, but as a strategic fulcrum. Investigators in this account reportedly discovered that an old financial pathway once associated with Andrew's early 2000s Mediterranean travels had been digitally echoed in modern transaction trails connected to the Lindsay story. That detail didn't prove guilt, but it created narrative gravity. And in a scandal driven by perception, gravity is power. Princess Anne, described by insiders as operating with icy precision, allegedly decided the monarchy could not allow ambiguity to be weaponized any longer. A private meeting was arranged. No press, no spectacle, just legal papers, consequences, and a choice. The document placed before Andrew, according to sources cited in the unfolding story, was narrowly worded. It did not confess scandal. It did not admit wrongdoing. It confirmed only one thing, that he had met Meghan Markle briefly in Nice in 2002 during a social gathering connected to the Yacht circuit. A single point of contact, a factual anchor. Signing it would detonate years of denial and reopen old credibility wounds. Not signing it would leave the monarchy exposed to an escalating narrative it could not control. After a long silence, he signed. And that signature, in this version of events, was the trap being set. Because once the meeting was acknowledged publicly through a carefully placed press leak, the rumor gained just enough plausibility to keep Lindsay's claim alive, but not enough to validate it. The palace, if this account is to be believed, allowed the story to breathe on purpose. Surveillance reportedly intensified. Financial flows were monitored in real time. Communication lines around Lindsay's legal team were scrutinized. The longer the operation ran, the more data investigators could harvest. It was not about drama. It was about documentation. While the public argued online, Prince William allegedly moved on a parallel track. Editors from major British newspapers were quietly summoned to a confidential briefing at Kensington Palace. Phones were surrendered. Doors were sealed. What they were shown, according to insiders in the narrative, was decisive. Forensic evidence and financial tracing that dismantled the biological claim entirely and reframed the entire episode as an attempted reputational and financial manipulation. Central to that reframing was DNA testing. Samples reportedly obtained through lawful investigative channels showed no biological connection between Lindsay and either Prince Andrew or Meghan Markle. At the same time, bank records and corporate filings tied funding for Lindsay's legal campaign back to Archie Type Consulting LLC, and through that, allegedly to Meghan's financial authority. The message delivered to editors was blunt. This was not a secret air scandal. This was, in the palace's view, an orchestrated hoax with financial engineering behind it. The next morning, headlines across the UK shifted tone in eerie unison. The narrative flipped from royal shock claim to royal hoax exposed. International outlets followed. The emotional spectacle collapsed under the weight of forensic framing. Corporate fallout followed fast in the story's telling. Entertainment partners began distancing themselves. Brand relationships reportedly froze. Industry sources were quoted describing reputational risk as the breaking point. Again, these moves were presented as reactions to the allegations of orchestration. orchestration, not to personal scandal. Through it all, Meghan remained publicly silent. That silence, interpreted by critics as strategic and by supporters as legal caution, became its own headline. Reports described frantic activity inside the Montecito estate, document reviews, legal consultations, digital security sweeps. None of it confirmed wrongdoing, but in the court of public imagination, movement equals meaning. Then came the most symbolic fracture of all. Prince Harry, portrayed in this narrative as increasingly alarmed by the financial irregularities he had helped uncover, filed for divorce citing a breakdown of trust. He reportedly surrendered devices to investigators and agreed to full financial review of joint entities. Palace insiders framed it not as betrayal, but as separation from a situation he believed had spiraled beyond control. Meanwhile, Lindsay's position deteriorated. Authorities, acting on evidence supplied during the palace's internal review, detained her for questioning related to documentation and financial inducements. But under legal pressure, she reportedly began cooperating, handing over communications, draft statements, and payment instructions she claimed did not originate from her. As the legal process widened, Prince Andrew quietly withdrew from public life once more, relocated away from royal residences while investigations concluded. The palace described the move as protective containment, not punishment. By the time Buckingham Palace issued its final formal statement, the tone was clinical. No theatrical language, no personal attacks, just findings. Law enforcement and independent forensic review, it said, had determined Lindsay bore no familial relationship to any member of the royal household. Biological claims were false. Financial matters were under jurisdictional review. Inside palace walls, the episode was reportedly archived alongside other historic crises, not as scandal, but as a case study in attempted manipulation of royal identity for leverage. No victory laps, no emotional speeches, just records, procedures, and a line drawn quietly in institutional stone. And as one senior source supposedly summarized in the aftermath, the crown did not win by shouting. It won by waiting, documenting, and letting the truth, however messy, arrive wearing evidence instead of outrage.